Well, good day, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to have a bit of a chinwag with Rocco Landers. Now, Rocco is an impressive young racer here in the US and has really excelled in MotoAmerica, where he has won 3 MotoAmerica championships, both twice in a row with the MotoAmerica Junior Cup, which is now known as the Talent Cup, and also MotoAmerica Twins champion. Over the last 2 years, he's been competing in the King of the Baggers series, and in his first 2 years has podiumed 9 times and won 3 races. So he is one of the first US racers to compete and podium across 4 different classes in MotoAmerica. There's no doubt he's a talented guy and a lot of fun to talk to. So if you enjoy getting inside the heads of racers and understanding a little bit about how they think, how they tick, and where their career's gone, then stick around for this. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, it would really help us if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, your favorite platform of choice. This is a brand new podcast in terms of those platforms. We've been on YouTube now for about a year, and folks seem to like the content. So if you like the content, take a minute, write a review. I'd really appreciate it. All right, let's go chat to Rocco. Well, g'day, Rocco, mate. It's awesome to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very stoked.
Yeah, well, I'm stoked. And for the audience listening, I heard of Rocco for the first time about 7 years ago when I was spending a bit of time with Keith Code at the California Superbike School, and we're just talking about up and coming races. And that's when I first heard Rocco's name, and Rocco was, I don't think, even a teenager then. But Rocco, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, all that stuff.
Well, my name's Rocco. I race in King of the Baggers and Stock 1000 for Vance and Ides Motorsports right now. And like you said, I've been working with the school since I met Keith like the day after I was born. So it's been a long path, and Superbike School's helped me every step of the way. But yeah, that's kind of it right now. I've won 3 MotoAmerica championships. So I was in the Junior Cup in 2019 and 2020, and then in the Twins Cup in 2020 as well. Still racing MotoAmerica, having tons of fun. Can't complain.
That's great, and I definitely want to sort of roll back a little bit on like how you got started in racing and all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, so you obviously you had your back-to-back championships in the Junior Cup, right?
Yeah.
And what exactly is the Junior Cup? What is that? What sort of bikes are they? What are the requirements?
Well, so Junior Cup actually, 2024 was the last year that they ran that class. They replaced it with the Talent Cup this year, which is the Kramer 350, I think. I don't remember exactly. Yeah. It's a 350 KTM, but it was Ninja 400s, R3s, CBR 500s, the RC 390s, and kind of just that sort of bike, like just the ultra lightweight street bikes. I raced on a Ninja 400. I had some really good friends help us out. My dad made the program kind of happen, and then we had Jeremy Toy and a good friend Jesse Norton hop on board. So it was fun, kind of just Loki kind of ran the team out of our house here in LA, and then and a shop in San Diego called Lee's Cycle, and it was really fun. So that was some of the best days of my life.
Right, yeah, that's awesome. And is that, the Rookies Cup, the Red Bull Rookies Cup, which obviously is out of Europe, that's obviously a different thing. But I know a lot of listeners ask me that, like that's like you have to be, I think, a minimum age of 16. They're racing on RC 390s too, right?
No, they raced the. I mean, now I think it's the newer, maybe a newer spec, but they used to race the older spec KTM Moto 3 bikes, and I think they recently changed the age. It's 14 or 15 through like I don't know 21 or 20 or 18 or 21 or something. But whenever I was doing it, it was 13 to 18. But I raced that in 2020 as well. But unfortunately, COVID really, really screwed that up. So I ended up at one point, like one of the countries had essentially barred Americans from entering under basically all circumstances.
Oh.
So I had to get stuck, and we improvised by doing Twins Cup and Junior Cup on top of that. And I did 2 rounds, and I felt like I did decent after. those first 2 rounds, but it was like, what are you really gonna do? Like, I had the last time I'd ridden a prototype bike was maybe 2 years before that, and I just had to adapt. And I actually felt good. Like at one point, I was within a tenth or two, or within a second of the top. It's not a tenth or two, my bad, but within a second of the first place in one of the sessions, and I was like stoked. And I wasn't there in the race, but like I'd felt that if we'd been able to keep going, I had a decent chance of actually finding some time, maybe not winning or getting in the top three, but I felt that I could have kept progressing, and it was definitely a bummer. And also, I grew a lot, so I got selected when I was like 5'5", maybe 120 pounds, 110, I don't know, somewhere around there. Then once I went to race, I was around 5'9", about 135 pounds, 140 pounds. So I was definitely the biggest guy there, and that was tough. But I mean, it was a great experience, and I had tons of fun.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I didn't know that, and I definitely want to talk a lot about growth as we go on, because obviously growth is obviously a lot of things, physical, mental, emotional. And I didn't know that and that's, I suppose, of all races, there's always going to be challenges that whether it's COVID or whatever it is, injuries. I didn't know you had actually done that. And I interviewed Cormac Buchanan a few months back. He's a Kiwi, if you know Cormac, yeah.
He was at the selection the year that I tried out. I think he got selected the next year. And he was really fast.
Yeah, he's the first Kiwi actually since Simon Crafar to qualify for GP. So he's going to be in Moto 3 this year.
Yeah, I heard that. It's sick.
Which is pretty cool. But and then you went on to MotoAmerica, right? And so what I noticed is you've been super flexible. Like I know you've been competing really well in Mission King of the Baggers, but you've also raced in other classes, right, in MotoAmerica?
Yeah. So I've raced in. I think I was the first guy to win in 4 classes. So I've won in Junior Cup, Twins Cup, Super Sport, and Baggers. Hopefully we'll make it 5 this year in stock, but who knows? We'll try our best. But yeah, it's just I feel like riding as many bikes as I did as a kid, and the amount of experience I have. I mean, I've been riding since I was 2. I've been racing since I was 5. It's been a path, but I've had tons of experience on lots of different types of machinery, and maybe that assists in giving kind of the best possible chance whenever going from bike to bike. But I mean, the Baggers are its own thing, though. That's a completely different vehicle compared to anything.
Yeah. And so I'm glad you brought that up. So were you born and raised in California, in LA? Or?
Yes. Yeah, okay. I was born in LA and Burbank, and I lived here almost my entire life, and I'm close to Glendale now, so yeah.
How does a kid in LA get exposure to motorcycles in the way you have from such a young age? I'm curious, like where, how, why, like big city?
My dad was a coach at the school. He was one of Keith's first coaches to do the seminars in the room. Okay. Have you done a school?
I've done 50 days of the school now.
Okay. That's a dumb question. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But he so he did his seminars, and he moved out here from Missouri, where he lives now. He moved back, but he'd moved out here and for racing, and he met Keith through some people and started working at the school, and kind of worked there from the late 90s until like 2009, 2010. And then I started racing, and kind of snowballed from there. But he got me into it. I can give him 100% credit for that.
That's cool, and that's a really good story, because a lot of people I meet, like my son, for example. If I felt like he was really good on a bicycle, had some level of, I'm like, okay, well, let's get on a dirt bike. But for you, it was kind of almost like from the day you were born, it was, you were destined to at least ride. But I suppose there's a difference between riding and enjoying motorcycles and then wanting to go racing. So
yeah.
Was racing always a goal, or?
I mean, so whenever I was really little, my dad would take me on rides on dirt bikes and whatnot. So for riding, I guess he would take me on like a little, like one of those baby pouches, and I guess I'd just always pass out. Like, really? I would just fall asleep whenever we're riding. It didn't really matter, like, we're riding at 450, how fast we're going. I guess I would just always, like, you have to, like, hold my head so I'd fall forward when I was really little. And I guess the only time that he could get me to sit still was whenever like Supercross or I guess GP sometimes was on TV. He was a big Supercross fan, as am I now. But
That's
I mean, I've always been like a annoyingly competitive dude. I've kind of been trying to get rid of that lately, so I have less of an ego. But but I mean, sorry, my earbuds keep freaking
no, it's
acting
okay.
up.
You've got more hair than me, so I don't have that
Yeah,
problem with
it's pretty
earbuds. So
stupid.
hair doesn't knock them out. Yeah.
Yeah, they keep
um,
like just like slowly doing their little thing. No,
yeah,
but again,
I'm getting kind of
so
jealous there, Rocco. You got a good head of
uh,
hair, man. Hey, so you talk
dude,
about egos. So it's interesting you mentioned egos. So
yeah.
I chatted with Matt Oxley, if you know Matt. Matt's
I haven't met him. I mean, I've seen all of his work. He's
yeah,
great.
we did a podcast of Matt, and he basically said like racers are basically cold-hearted
Yeah.
killers, which is almost exact words. That's what they are. You have egos. That's kind of that's why I'm not a racer, but I think I'm a pretty good track day. I'm an A group fast track day rider, right? But I'm not a
Well,
killer. I don't
yeah.
have that instinct. Like, tell me, why do you feel like the ego is bad
Well, I
as
mean,
a
it's not
racer?
that the ego is. I'm talking like if I'm in any state, if I play a game of Uno and I start
Okay,
losing my mind because my hyper competitiveness, I gotta
okay,
learn to turn it on and turn it off. I mean,
right,
like on
right.
track, like realistically, it's nothing personal. Like there's very rare cases where it's personal, where I'm like, okay, I want to beat that guy. But like normally, like I can turn it on. Like when I get on track, it's more. I don't really. It's like I'm just doing everything I can to get to the front. That's the ego. Like I'm like I can turn it off when I get off track because I feel that it's unnecessary to be one of those guys where you're just always kind of just being like cocky or mean. And like I definitely used to be like that, honestly. Like I used to, and it doesn't win you any fans, it doesn't win you any sponsors, and it's not a nice thing to. It's just not cool. Like you could get who wants to be that kind of guy that no one likes. And
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
I kind of learned to just be a little bit more centered and down to earth. Tried to be. I mean, I'm not saying that I am yet. Definitely have my moments, but it's a big deal
Yeah.
just to learn to be able to turn on and off. Like you can still be highly competitive and not have a massive ego.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I know that as a racer and as a pro, it's kind of I would say it's easy to kind of maybe even just take that for granted. But for a mere mortal like me, trying to understand like kind of what defines a old fat 53-year-old guy like me who's pretty fast in A group from a young professional racer like you is kind of exactly what you said. It's I only really want to compete with myself. So if someone passes me on a track at a track day, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go. I don't want to because for me it's just about what I'm working on, my plan. I'm working on hitting that apex better or getting out of that corner faster, which I definitely want to talk to you about as we get into this. I want to get your views on a lot of things about writing, but okay, so that's helpful. But was there a moment when you realized, hey, shit, maybe I can make a career out of this?
I mean, like I knew about MotoGP and kind of how it works since I was really little. So
Yeah,
my goal was always like it's tough to say like, oh, my goal was to be this, my goal was to be that. My goal was to make a living racing, and like right now I'm at the point where I'm able to do that, which is like the freaking luckiest thing ever. And I'd say it'd be nice to go to World Superbike or GP, but I mean at this point it's like their opportunities are so few and far between, and it would take so much money to like we didn't have the money to get into the series that would have directly taken us there, so it's kind of taking the back route right now,
hmm.
and I'm really enjoying it. I mean, who else gets to race
Hmm.
Tigers? Like, I mean, there's what, like 12 other people on Earth, and I mean, they're some of the most fun bikes that I've ever ridden. It's quite the experience.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, I've been thinking a lot about the Bagger series, and when I first heard about it, I was like, "Oh, great! We're gonna have Harleys like spilling oil all over the track and fucking it up for
That's how
everyone
it
else."
was in the beginning.
Right, right. And it's funny because this is going to sound like a weird sort of parallel, but my first time on the racetrack was in the 80s on two strokes on Vespas and Lambrettas, which are scooters, and we used to race
Yeah.
Vespas. Okay, and there's actually a whole
I guess
class about it.
MRA, the series out in Colorado has a Vespa race. That's kind of funny. Just a side note. Continue.
No, but and when I think about Harleys, I felt it's kind of like similar parallels. Like what? I actually rode a Harley. I've ridden a Harley twice from Seattle to New York and back. And
Yeah.
I did it when I first moved here because I wanted the whole American experience. I got to right across America on a Harley.
Yeah.
And but I didn't have the leather chaps or the leather vest or any of that, stuff, the tassels and shit. But now tell me about
Yeah, that's kind of
and the half helmet. But tell me about the class. How many is this your second year in the baggers?
yeah. So 2025 will be my second year. It's funny, I've never actually ridden a Harley off of the track, so I don't really know exactly how they are, but like the race bike it's a race bike. It feels, you can brake deep, you can accelerate hard, even harder than most bikes because it slides so well. I mean, the closest thing I could compare it to would be a cross between a supermoto and a flat track bike, because the amount that you can steer it with the rear end is crazy. Like, it's super, super long, and it has like 190 something pounds of torque or somewhere around there. I could be low balling or high ball, and I don't really know. That's kind of what I've like heard through the grapevine in general. It's just a crap ton of torque and a ton of horsepower, and it's long and heavy, so it's just spins. Like, when you open the throttle, you can just like have it. It kicks out to a certain angle, and you can just give it full throttle, and it'll just carry that slide for as long as you're leaned over. And sometimes even when you're not, like at Homestead, we were testing a couple weeks ago, and like you there's this like kind of like right into a little dip, and then you go left up kind of, but you're like not really leaned over, like you have maybe that much lean angle, and it slides all the way until you're like halfway down the next straight, and the wear mark is in the middle of the tire. So it's crazy. Like, you don't see like on super bikes, you'll see the wear mark kind of more towards the top than you would see on like a 600, and a 600 more so than like a twin, and a twin more so than a 400. But you never see it in the middle like you do on a bagger. So you can imagine.
That opens up a whole new sort of physics discussion, right? Around at the end of the day, you're on top of a gyroscope, which, so long as it's staying in motion, it's going to want to stay upright. But you're on a different type of gyroscope with the Harley, right? The torque, the length, the rake is longer. Everything is different.
Yeah.
Who are so when you talk to the guys that first pioneered it, because I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, you actually had 2 victories in your first year, right, on the baggers?
Yeah, we won a race at Coda and Jersey, and race one at both of them.
Dude, that's amazing. I'll be at Coda for MotoGP this year. But
yeah, I will. I'm trying to make it out there myself.
Oh, you are? Yeah. But maybe we should hang out. But the guys that pioneered it, like, did it for the first time. Who were they? Like, what stories did they have to tell about, like, the first time they did it?
Well, the first year was 2020, and they did a one-off at Laguna, and Tyler O'Hara raced the SNS bike they basically just, I think they just took an Indian and just bolted a bunch of random stuff on it all around, and it, like, they made some parts, but like realistically, I mean, I think they were doing the same times as the 400s, and then like the next closest guy was Gillum, and he still had like the platforms, and he was on a street glide, and that was actually Vance and Hines' bike, so he had the Harley street glide. But it was still so new. Like, it was such a cluster. Like, so many bikes blew up. Like, people kept running off. It looked like everyone was puffing smoke. I mean, at one point Frankie looped, and that was crazy. He was trying to practice start and fully looped himself and had a bagger land on him, which dude's just a tank. I don't know how he survived that, and he still got a podium, which was so sick.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to hear the stories, because I think a lot of people will think, well, it's amazing marketing on Harley's part, but actually they do have a race pedigree, right? I mean, they were flat track racers for years and years and years.
And they had the old, whatever, I can't remember the designation they had, but it was the old super bikes with Miguel and whatnot back in the day. So Miguel Duhamel. So
yeah,
I mean, yeah. Then the next year, so Factory Harley came in the next year, and it became kind of a war of manufacturers, which is like, I mean, at this point, it's the only class that still has that in MotoAmerica, except for hooligans at this point. But hooligans and baggers are one and the same, in my opinion, kind of like as a concept. I mean, it's again, it's the final class where you can you have a properly good chance of being able to make a living. Like, except for Superbike and maybe the top super sport guys, and even then it's just like the top Superbike guys. So where in this one you have a lot of competitive bikes, competitive teams, like exorbitant, unnecessary amounts of money going into bike development. Like, necessary, but like it's a lot. And the bike, I mean, they're great, and like working with manufacturers is something that every series needs because it increases fan engagement and increases the competitiveness of the series. That's it. I'm grateful for baggers.
Now you're speaking like more than a racer right now, which is cool. I like the way you're talking about that because you sort of the segment itself of motorcycling, as you break it down, whether on the street or on the track, has been on the track. It's been very, very limited to super sport, super bike, MotoGP class. Whereas other motorsports, like auto, right? You've got Formula One, Indy, NASCAR. You've got all these different classes, and I think that's great. I think it's good for the sport, and I would say at first I didn't think it was good for the sport, but I've actually come around now. And now you guys were also at.
I kind of agree.
Were you in Spain? Some of you were in Spain at the end of the last season racing in front of the MotoGP crowd. I heard. Was that right?
So I about a week before I was doing a training day and dislocated my shoulder. I was getting ready for the race and I'd been like preparing, and I got everything in a row. Like I'd put like a halt on the jiu-jitsu training that I was doing so I didn't get hurt doing that. And it just went simple day. Last session of the card track, it was starting to get dark. I might go out and just wad it and toss myself in the weirdest way possible at about 12 miles an hour. And I tripped, like I can't, like I either, like, it felt like I got my foot stuck, like I say, the thing flipped over, and I think I caught my foot on the bar inside the handguard, and it just like caught and whiplash slammed me on my shoulder, and it was not fun. It was highly painful, as all shoulder dislocations are, and I spent a grueling 20-minute drive headed to Riverside Hospital, wanting to just chop it off, get rid of it. It was terrible. And then they took care of it.
Well, does crashing on a bagger feel any different to crashing on a sport bike?
Well, it's funny because the bagger, it's numb, but it still gives you a lot of feel. So like you can keep the thing leaned over, and like you feel the front like doing a lot more before you would on a sport bike, and it's a lot more obvious. And same with the rear, even though it's kind of numb, but like it's a lot harder to save like a proper like something gnarly. Like if it's a rear end slide, like it's fairly easy, like to have it just like slide and come back. Whereas the same slide might cause you to high side it off on a super bike or a super sport bike. Like the front, I mean, once it goes, like there's no saving it. And it's because the bike's so heavy. Like if you look at my crash in Jersey, it was funny because like a month before I did that, I had like the polar opposite of a crash. That was like 13 mile an hour. I tossed myself down the front straight in New Jersey at around 125.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little over 100. It was like 124.7 or something. 0.6, but I just got tossed, and like I had, minimal injuries. Like I have a area on my lower back that's got like it's like this skin, like I had like a gnarly contusion or whatever, like this step. I can't remember what it's called, but this step above a contusion.
Yeah.
So it was like it was purple. It was painted black and blue, but like other than that, like I still raced the next day and was totally fine. Couldn't walk too well, and I had to take a week off of work. But
yeah, I saw that crash. Yeah, I watched that crash. But so you've won obviously championships in a bunch of different classes, and so you're talented, and you're still not even at drinking age. I know you're up late last night, which is why you're yawning a lot, but it wasn't because you're out partying, because you're not at drinking age. You're doing other stuff, but like, how did it feel to achieve success so early on, and how did you handle that? Do you have good people around you to not let it go to your head and to stay focused, or do you put it down to anything? Or
getting to the point where I'm at, like I would give that credit for that to my dad and whatnot, but also like you live, you learn. I'm not particularly old, but you have life experiences and you get put in different positions and you learn from things. It's just every day is a learning experience for everyone, whether they admit it or not. So
it's a common theme. Every racer, honestly, almost every racer I've met on the podcast says the similar things, but in slightly different ways. But the most common theme is the encouragement from their parents. Your dad, maybe your
if you get into the position, like I would not be here with my dad, without my dad, and and it's the same for my whole family. I mean, my whole family was helping run a team. Like my mom was cooking, my sisters were
Yeah.
providing crazy entertainment, and it's just running around. And
That's
I
cool.
mean,
That's cool. Are your sisters? You
it
got help? You have a couple of sisters, younger sisters, older sisters.
yeah. So I got two sisters and I got a little brother. So the two sisters are now 18 and 16, and then my brother is he's 13. My little sister does a 16-year-old. She raced the 400 at Chuckwalla. It's actually there. Headed there today, I think, or tomorrow.
Oh, you're so lucky to be near Chuckwalla. For those of you not in the US, Chuckwalla's like kind of a year-round racetrack in Southern California. You can race
And it's
there
not
right
year-round.
year-round.
It's September
Close.
to April. You can't ride during the
Right.
summer. It's too
Right.
hot.
Okay. So it's a winter racetrack. There you go. See, for me, it
Yeah.
feels like year round because I always see it around this time of year. So that's a good check in on that one. And so, as you think about like your training routine, I'm curious, you're young, so you have a lot of biology on your side right now. For me, as an old guy, like the prep I do off the track is, obviously is more important than the prep I do on the track. And getting ready just for, I did 5 days in a row. I did about 20 track days last year, but I did 5 in a row, which is for a 50-year-old. Was like
more than I did.
Yeah. Well, what do you, so what do you, like, as you think about your training, like what does a typical week look like now as a pro and you're preparing for a race? What does it look like?
Well, I mean, I've recently gotten back into any sort of training because I couldn't run or cycle or anything. I couldn't. The only exercise I could do was like if I put a sling on and sat on a stationary bike because I could have like no impact. But like normally I do run like a couple runs a week. Like I just go running and then I try to go visit the kart track or do at least something else.
Mm-hmm.
The gym, like I do calisthenics are my favorite actually. I do push-ups, pull-ups, but I've only been able to do one-arm push-ups since I hurt myself, which is actually a funny thing. So I went from being able to do 4 to 25 in a set with my left arm after I hurt my arm.
Okay, so
like
you
maybe
can only do one-arm push-ups. I can maybe only do a 10th
Now I
of
can't
one-arm
because my
push-up on a
arm
good day.
my arm is like it doesn't work too well.
Yeah,
I don't have strength out of it. Yeah, it was funny. When we tested at Homestead, I was like lifting I was like, well, I was totally good. Like my hand and my forearm are totally good, but it's just like still a little bit like it's not like so much pain. It's just like so atrophied and weak up on my shoulder.
What is Homestead? Is this Homestead Harley's training track or something?
No, Homestead Miami Speedway is just the NASCAR track down in Miami.
Okay.
It's a winter racetrack.
What does Harley provide? I mean, obviously you're a sponsor, you're a rider, sponsored rider. Like, what do they provide in terms of off-track support for all that stuff?
Well,
like
I mean, the Harley bagger teams can test with the factory team. I mean, I race for Vance and Hines, so I'm riding. I'm racing on Harley, and Harley supports us immensely. But I race for Vance and Hines, so
Okay.
And I mean, there's not a ton of it hasn't quite grown big enough to have like a big off-track training facility and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I mean, perhaps it will in the future, like we have for Supercross teams.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is I suppose if like NASCAR is one of those things that's uniquely American. Most people outside America don't like it. If I'm honest, but baggers,
I get it. Honestly, I'm not a huge. Like, I mean, I'll watch NASCAR once in a while, but like I'd prefer IndyCar myself.
Oh well, you would know who Scott Dixon is then, because Scott's another.
I do know who Scott Dixon is.
Yeah, we've got a few Kiwis that have come out of New Zealand in motorsports. You got Scott Dixon in IndyCar, Bruce McLaren Motorsports. He's a Kiwi.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. You got
Cormac now.
Have you ever heard of the Britain motorcycle?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
BRITTEN. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a massively innovative motorcycle that no one had heard of until he turned up at Laguna one year and beat all the Ducatis. And he built it by hand in like a garage in New Zealand. I'll have to share some information on that. But I feel like what you're doing, I could see this bagger class going global, and you could be the guy, right? I mean, you're young, you could go and race all over the world, and is that something you aspire to do? Or you think, what is your love? What do you really love? Is it sport bikes or baggers? Or you're not allowed to say?
Not allowed to say.
Okay.
They both have equal. They're equal. I love them both for different reasons, and we'll just see where the wind takes us. If it ends up being a full-time bagger thing, or if I end up just racing, if the baggers like for any reason goes away, or I get better, like my opportunity looks way better to race sport bikes, and I'll take what goes, what like we'll go where the wind takes us.
Well, I'll tell you what then, let's transition to sport bikes then, because I'm curious. Every rider I talk to talks about how important bike setup is. And I notice that some riders, some racers are very involved in it, more than others. If you look on the MotoGP side, Aleix Espargaro seems to be very, very engaged in it. He's one of the riders I follow a lot. If you look, a lot of riders are they may not be as successful on the track. I mean, Aleix had mixed success. He rode MotoGP, so he wasn't a fool. But like one of the best apparently in terms of helping the engineers progress the bike. How involved are you, like on the sport bike side, in providing feedback around the suspension setup, the overall setup you have? Like, do you have like preferences on how your bike's characteristics are set up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I'm a complete, absolute clueless idiot when it comes to like actual, like knowing how to work on it, knowing what does what. But I can tell, I'm pretty decent, especially on like bikes that I'm comfortable on, and telling what they're doing wrong. Like I can be like, okay, well this is this is that, this is that. Then my crew chief can take that and do a change that benefits it. I was more involved on the R6. The R6 is really finicky when it comes to setup. And like my dad and I would be on a computer because he was one of the team. We'd just be like on everything, and he'd be reading it. I'd be telling him exactly everything about it because the R6 is like a knife's edge. It's a sick bike, and it, like when you have it working, like it's maybe the best chassis ever created in production. But like chassis, like you think it is the way it works, but it's so hard to set the thing up. Like it is impossible, and it annoying as hell. I'm sorry. No. But good, it's these freaking earbuds. I need to get some new ones that actually like stay in. That's the Skull Candies right now. They're not great. They're like $20. But I probably should have gotten some more expensive. I got it specifically for this. I didn't have them before.
Maybe I'll send you a set as a thank you. Well, I'll make a note of that.
No worries. No, you don't have to. But yeah, no, like now that I'm racing the Suzuki, I mean, one thing Suzukis are known for is being very easy to set up. It's hard to get them to be like you can't get them as perfect, say, sometimes as an R6, and especially 1,000. Like 1,000 is never going to handle quite as good as a 600, just the weight and the way it's set up and everything. But like Suzukis are so easy to set up that like I can kind of, and on the even the GSX-8 last year, I could just like say some vague or even super specific stuff to my crew chief, and he could do that and put some change in it. 99% of the time, it was a big deal. But I operate in a certain way, so I like to find the base setup. Like I like to find like a setup that kind of works damn good everywhere because I can ride it the same everywhere. I don't have to change my style and do other things like. Laguna, that doesn't work because Laguna is super different, but Laguna is a special case. But to find the base setup on the bagger, we ran the same setup basically, except for plus or minus some clickers and maybe a little bit of spring rate at Laguna or at New Jersey and Coda, and you could not find two more diametrically opposed tracks. But like, I mean, the spring rate and maybe a few things were slightly different, but more overall, it was very similar. And that's how I like to operate. Like I like to have like on the 400 we found a base setup and almost never deviated from it. On the 650, I mean we only rode it a few times, so I can't really say that. The R6, that was exactly the key to our success in 2022, is we finally found it and I figured out how to ride the thing. And I mean last year on both bikes, like it was kind of a struggle on the twin because we didn't have any testing. We never once tested the thing outside of a race, so I was always kind of on the back foot when it comes to track time. But on the bagger, I mean that's just what we did, and it showed. It was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean the reason I asked the question is I even for an old guy, I spent a decent amount of time on Reddit and other things, and watching communities of track day people or bike enthusiasts, some old people like me, some brand new to it, and so many people in these forums. I kind of have to bite my tongue. They're like, "Hey, here's the pictures of me. Like, how does my body position look? Or what should I change? And like, oh, I've got this bike and I put all these things on it and I'm not going faster." And part of me just wants to say, like, focus on the fundamentals. Stop worrying about all the shit you're putting on it. Don't try, if you're like trying to get a picture of your knee dragging
on my R1N that I just bought as my first bike.
Right. Or you get these pictures of these guys, like they're like the bike is like this and they're leaning off the bike so they can drag their knee. And like, I'm like, well, maybe you should get lean. It's there to judge lean angle, not body angle, right? It's like your body's off, but your bike is not leaning. Like, what?
Well, and then those people, like those people, okay.
No.
I don't really care. Like they do their thing. If they're cool, like honestly, I'll hype them up. Like if someone's cool and like, oh hey, look, I dragged my, yeah, dude, you killed it, nice job. But you'll get some that it's like they take it so seriously and their ego is so big because they've ridden like on the street for 2 years as well.
Mm.
So they're a veteran, but like they'll come to the kart track and then they're like, oh no, yeah, like like I've won so many streets, like I kind of know what I'm doing. And then a kid passes them, like a little kid passes them on track, and they lose their mind, and they're like just excuse after excuse after excuse, and I'm like, dude, you were on like a 450, this dude's on a 150, or you were on a 150, this kid's on a 65, and it's like, yeah, pass me outside because of your weight. Okay.
That's but like so like I rode on the street for 30 years. I rode all over the world.
I have never ridden on the street.
Well, that's what I want to get to in a minute. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that I turned up to my first track day at the age of 45 after 30 years on the street. And I think if I had turned up as a 19-year-old, I would have been the person you just said. But I turned up wanting to learn, right? And started on a leader bike and then went down to a 400, and now I'm on a 660, RS 660. And I'm doing. And dude, like a racer told me the other day, last year at the track, is like, dude, take that lap timer off your bike. It's not going to help you. You're not racing. Just forget about that. And my local track is the Ridge, right? And I'm doing
nice.
best time I've done. The best time I've done is just under 2 minutes, which I know is slow for you, but fast for me.
400?
But 660.
660. That's still not bad. I mean, I think, dude, it's been a minute since I've been at the Ridge. Like, I haven't ridden the Ridge for anything since 2023, and even then, I don't really remember the lap times. That was on the Twin. But I mean, yeah, I can't remember. Like 400 would have been like 50 something, or maybe I don't remember, something like that.
Yeah,
no, it's not bad at all. No. And the Ridge is a difficult track. Like, it's got so much twisties, and it's probably the most technically difficult track in the country. But
it's definitely a great track to learn. I've done a bunch of other tracks, but getting back to you. So yeah, you preempted me. Do you ride on the street? And you just said you don't, and you've never ridden on the street, huh?
No, I don't have a street bike. So, I mean, maybe I would. Maybe I would try to pop some wheelies in front of some girls on the street, but probably a good thing that I don't have one, to be honest with you.
Is there a reason why you don't? Was it your parents discouraged you from it, or?
Never got around to it. I mean, I had the opportunity a couple times where if I'd could maybe get one if I won a certain thing, and every single time I was second and I didn't get it. But
yeah, it's. I'm curious because a lot of
I'll probably
sport,
have one eventually. They're fun.
You think okay? So you don't have. I was curious because a lot of pro sports don't allow their riders or drivers to do certain things, and I was always surprised. I don't know Josh Heron. I think he's fucking awesome. I watch him race, and I'd love to meet him. But if you want to introduce me, let me know. I'd love to get him on the podcast. But I noticed that on Instagram, he's doing crazy shit on the street on his Ducatis. And I'm like, whoa! Are you taking risks, or is it more for marketing for Ducatis? I know he's sponsored, but.
Probably a bit of both, but I mean, Josh will be the first to tell you he's kind of a hooligan, and he's really really good at it. He'll do some stuff on that stock V4 that I could not imagine doing, just this big 12 o'clock wheelies. Then he skids the thing, and I'm like, I'm good for you, dude. Power to you. It's sick, and I love that his team lets him do that.
He's hilarious watching him on Instagram. He does some cool shit.
Oh yeah.
But okay, so you don't ride on the street, but you might ride on the street. So. I think so. I think about racing in the US. I'm from New Zealand, a little country, bottom of the South Pacific. I look at Europe.
I've always wanted to visit, by the way. I've always wanted to visit New Zealand, by the way.
Well, if you ever want to go, let me know. I'll hook you up. And I know you like Supercross, and so maybe I should introduce you to Cormac if you don't know him, because he is massive Supercross guy, and he's from the South Island, New Zealand, and he did a lot of Supercross and flat track racing growing up. So I'm sure
you have that new Supercross kid, what's his name? Something Davies.
Yeah. I'll pop it up on the street, but yeah, we do. We actually have a pretty good history in Supercross. Let's talk about talent. I'm following all these different talent. There's the European junior MotoGP. There's the on the women's side. There's the FIM women's Superbike Champion, which I think is great, by the way, to see. I had Mallory on a couple of weeks ago, and but talent development in Europe, though, there are a few kids we're going to be doing an interview soon with Kenze, who's a young. Yeah, you're with him at when I met you at Keith's party.
Yeah,
he looks like he's gonna he's turning a few heads in Europe, but I know it's really hard as a racer. Like even at the Moto3 level, it's expensive. Like I'm learning this. Like don't think because you're sponsored at the Moto3 level, even like it's hard.
Well, Moto3 is in like for proper Moto3 is more expensive than Moto2. Like you have to build stuff that you have to build Moto3 by so much, and they have a lot less restrictions. Like Moto2 is a sealed motor that you get from Triumph.
Right. Is it? But is it really just money? Right. No, the Moto2 is a much more controlled spec.
Money and development.
Is it really just money? Is it talent? Is it like what is it really that's holding us back from getting more talent?
In the U.S., I would say a lack of development. I mean, like a lack of development, a lack of opportunities. Because, like, I mean, in certain areas in Europe, like, I mean, not even all areas of Spain, but certain areas of Spain, certain areas of Italy, it's almost like baseball. Like you go after school and just go ride at the local track for 2 hours while your dad sits there, and then you go home, and then or you go like with a coach for 2 hours. It's just the same as baseball. I mean, at KSB, like it's now called Aspirations Circuit, but like I used to go there and train, and a dozen guys from Moto2 and Moto3 would train there with me, or modern guys, and like guys who I raced with, like Alonso. He and I were in 85s together, and he and I would go to. Like I would always see him at KSB when I would go there, and he's there all the time, training all the time. And now it's Aspar Circuit, and he rides that like R6 there. But it's a lack of opportunity, a lack of development. What like Matt Dill has like with Ovala USA, like he's done wonders, like fixing Apex and making it a lot more accessible. And you see a lot more young guys coming out and just be like, hey, like what is this? Like how do I get into it? And that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, and so it is definitely a topic because we had. We had such great riders. I think the last, obviously, Ben Spies is probably the last one that really broke through that level.
Well, over time, the dynamic shift, because back in the day, it was flat track. Like flat track, like you had got like there wasn't like back in the 80s and 90s, and I don't know about the 90s or whatever, but there weren't a lot of track days available. Like you couldn't go just like ride a ton of track days for 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years, and there wasn't mini racing like there. Maybe it was early Supermoto. That's for adults on 450s.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Or the 252 strokes at that point, I guess. There's like basic Supermoto. But there's no like development for kids. So like you have a guy who grows up racing flat track since he was 12 years old or 5 years old on his dad's backyard, and they get so much more like hours on like a motorcycle, and they build up, and then they go race GP because they've only been road racing for 2 years, 3 years maybe. They're going to destroy somebody who's been road racing for 5 or 6 years because they have so much more track time, and they've been racing flat tracking in the U.S. against the best in the world. Back in, this time I'm talking like the early guys, but then you start to see like the rise of like younger guys starting to do pocket bikes, and Rossi was a big one in that. In the 90s in Italy was kind of where that got its big start, like big kickoff. So you have the National Pocket Bike Series. So you have riders on road racing starting early on road race. Starting early on flat track is better than starting late in road racing. Starting early in road race infinitely better in my opinion than starting early in flat track, because there's skills that you build over time in road racing that you just would not get out in flat track because they're completely different disciplines. Like in flat track, you you don't use the front brake nearly as much as road race. You don't mess with the suspension, and everything is kind of used in different ways. It's
and when you say pocket bike, sport. You mentioned pocket bike. You talking about the Ovale?
No, smaller.
Smaller. Okay.
Like way smaller. Like no gears, about half the size of an Ovale. 40cc.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that because I've heard that a lot of.
I'll have to try to find some photos.
Yeah, I'd like to see them. I've heard a lot of grown-up racers actually practice on Ovales. Like, it's actually good for training. But maybe that's a myth. I don't know. Maybe that's like some kind of folklore or something.
They're fun for me. I struggle because they're very rigid and stiff, and I'm a bit like if you're under like 5'8" or 5'9", like you're gonna be really good on Ovale is gonna be really good. It gets harder. You end up getting cramped when you get a bit bigger. But like you see a ton of big guys making it work. It's just all up to your riding style. Like I love Ovales and I think they're sick.
Misty Hurst, who's one of the Cali school teachers, who I'm sure one of my favorite people. Her son's doing that. She's training her son. His son's doing pretty well actually in Canada. Right. To try to get him down to do some racing. I think he's like 13 or something. The talent is just, the development is just not here. Europe's got just much more of a pastime attitude towards the sport. So get all of that, Italian dad's hanging back, drinking his cappuccino, watching his son on the track. Yeah.
Well, the tracks, like, they have big facilities, like they have pools, like big swimming pools for the other kids, like for the other siblings to go play and chill and enjoy themselves, and so that they're not bored. And it's like, I mean, if you go to Mark Marquez, or if you go to Catalunya, like Mark Marquez, he's the same as Mahomes would be in Kansas City. Like he's a superstar. Like, people wear Messi jerseys, or they used to when I was there with FC Barcelona. People wear Messi jerseys and they wear Mark Marquez t-shirts. That's it. Those are the only two like sportsmen they support. Like, I mean, even like you see like older, less like you see Crivier t-shirts all the time, and you'd see Lorenzo t-shirts all the time. Like, it's such a big part of the culture. In Italy, not quite as much as Spain from what I observed, but like the daily news shows the results from qualifying or the races in GP, and they show like quick highlights, like just like our version of like, I guess, like Fox News or CNN or MSNBC and whatnot. Like, they show like racing highlights on TV, like whatever the daily news station, like not always, but like, it's bonkers. I mean, it's just part of their culture, and it's like where it's just not here.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because this might sound like an odd parallel, but you know, New Zealand, depending on the year, are usually number one in the world in rugby, up and down. Rugby is the world's third
I've
largest
seen their rugby, but
yeah, right.
The haka.
But like, yeah, right. But in America, there's such amazing, talented sports people, but you never see any fucking rugby anywhere. Like, there is a professional
soccer,
league.
Really?
Yeah, right. And so it's kind of similar with racing. And I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time though as well here. So this has been a good sort of free-flowing discussion, and it's interesting, the next question, because you're still super young, and it's going to be a weird one, but like, would you have advice for young riders that dream of getting into the sport in the US, given the challenges we have? Obviously there's a lot of variables, but like, what would the core question for me here is, if you're young and you want to go to the track, should you just turn up and send it, or should you get coaching from day one? That's kind of what I want to understand a bit more.
Well, you definitely need the basics. Like, if you're a little kid, like a properly little kid, like 5 or 6, like, there's only so much they're going to be able to absorb. It doesn't matter how aggressive you are with teaching, or how your coaching style is. Like, there's only so much a little kid's going to be able to absorb, and they're not going to be able, like, they're a kid. They're 5 years out the damn womb. Like, they don't have life experience. They haven't even really been to school at that point. So they don't have any experience learning new things. So like, you can teach basic things. Like my dad kind of let me just, like, he was like, okay, Rocco, I don't want you to build any bad habits. Like, you just need to, like, kind of in the beginning, just like use all the track, or try to relax your arms, like that, just basic, simple things. And that, like, even then at my age, like you have no idea what those concepts mean. Like you just don't know because you're a kid. Like, I would say to I wish I could tell myself this. Like, if you asked me a year ago, I wouldn't probably say anything, but like, just don't take things too seriously. I mean, we're having fun. We're racing bikes, and to like say to dads, like, just don't take things too seriously. Have fun. Do your thing. Just like it doesn't matter if you're not there now. Like, look where I was at the beginning of the year in baggers. Like, I was like 2.5 seconds off most of the time, and at the end I'd won a couple races. It just took like learning. It's not about how hard you're riding or about how much you know. It's just about learning a few little basic things and maybe tweaking a few things that you maybe hadn't thought of before. And that can find, like, if you find so much time, because like a second on or 2 seconds on a 20 turn, like, I was 2 seconds off at Coda, and it's a 20 turn track. That's about a tenth a corner. Like, that's not much. Like, you can find a tenth pretty easily if you just tweak it, if you know kind of what to tweak. And
you go. Yeah.
Like, just don't take it too seriously.
Man, I feel like having a whole hour with you just on riding skills, because I mean, I've been trying to break down, every corner, and there are some corners. Let's talk about a couple of racetracks. So, like at the Ridge, you might know there's 8A and 8B. It's like a kind of a double apex. So Josh Shannon went off to do a couple of years ago. It's
the down. Yeah. That's a sketchy corner.
It sets up. Well, a lot of people, what I'm curious about is your goal in life. This is going to sound really simple, to always be hitting the apex, every single apex.
No.
Because,
No.
Tell me about that. Why?
Well, because sometimes it's a waste of time to hit, like, you have to over slow, or like hitting both apexes in a double apex could hypothetically, like, I choose to generally avoid the first apex, because if you let the thing run out, like, no one's going to be able to brake where you're braking if you let the thing kind of run out and move it a little bit, or avoid it, or go a little bit wider. And you have a much better angle to accelerate coming up the hill. And
right,
it's
my son in the background.
But we I mean, you don't need I mean, the majority of the time hit your apexes, especially like I'll say this, in every corner at some point, if you're not just like full gas, you should be able to you should be hitting one of the apexes.
If I ask, obviously, the California Superbike school, Yamaha Champ school, you choose your favorite school. I think all the schools are really good, by the way. I don't think there's any bad one. I just have
California Superbike school is the best, by far.
For sure.
There is no competition. Trust me.
That's how I feel about it too.
Like but, the depth of understanding of the techniques is the difference between the Superbike school and some of the other ones. And the amount of rigorous training that goes into the coaches. Like the coach, it takes many months to become a coach. It doesn't matter. You're not just you're not getting coached by some track day guy who has a basic grasp of using all the track. You're maybe some people will call some of the techniques whatever. I personally believe that the majority of them that I've never found one that directly doesn't work. It might be slightly different than something that I'm doing, but oftentimes I went and did a Superbike school at Laguna right before Coda, and I've been racing for at this point almost 15 years. This will be my 15th season or my 16th season actually, or 15th this year. I'm terrible at math. His 15 years, so I think it's 15th season. But I go there and I still learn John Groom and I we had a huge breakthrough on apexes, on how different rates of turning in, and I'm and Steven Self was my on track coach, and it was great. You every single time you just can't have an ego. You're there to learn. You're not there to prove a point. We're all on the same bikes. We're all just goofing off. We all have different experience levels, and sometimes I will say we do have people who are like that, and they're the laughing stock. You're here to learn, and you're people are paying a lot of money to come learn. That's why the rules are so strict. That's why you don't break for the first half of the first day or the first few sessions. It's all about refined technique. It's not about anything else.
Everyone hear that? So I'm with you. I talk about you're going to be you're either a learn it all or a know it all. And if you're a learn it all, go to the school. And what I find interesting is that Keith invented the category of on-track training for mortals like me, to turn up and have everything provided. He invented the whole category. And the reality is we're still talking about physics. A bike is a gyroscope. There are so many things you can do. But the human on top is usually the problem, right? And so you got to fix the human on top of a gyroscope. And I've done 50 days of them, so I'm a big fan. And I've done other schools which are okay. But here's the thing: the reason I asked you the apex question, it's interesting you talk about rate of around the rate of the turn rate because Dylan Code was chasing me on the track last year, and he came out to me and said, "Dude, you're so slow. Your turn rate is so slow. You're gonna be way faster."
Mine I think you too abrupt. Mine was very abrupt.
He was I was too slow. But they also push you on apexes. You got to hit every freaking apex of a track. So I'll tell the guy. I'll tell Johnny that Rocco says I don't have to hit every apex.
I would say you should hit about 95 to 90, probably 6 or 7% of the apexes. I'm talking the only ones that you don't want to hit are the first in some double apex.
Okay.
I would say at first, you can skip the first. You can get away with skipping the first in in some super long corners. Technically, I guess the bull at Chuckwalla could be considered a double apex, but you enter wide and you just carry it and you use a late apex. You're always hitting an apex. In every single corner, unless you're just tapped. Even then, it's still gonna be. You're still gonna be using less actual distance if you use the apex. You're using the tarmac that's available to you without having to kind of steer around and use more at physical distance. So that's all that using the apex does, is it adds distance or adds width to the track, which allows you to open the throttle sooner. If you're missing your apexes, you're giving up. You can pretend the track is this much or however much more narrow, and on a more narrow track you can't accelerate as hard because you don't have as much distance to actually use on the exit. So in every corner you should be at least hitting an apex. In certain double apexes you shouldn't, because perhaps you can get in deeper if you don't, or maybe you have to overslow and overturn to get to where you can make the first apex, but the second apex and the double apex is by far the most important one. And at the corner you were talking about at the ridge, I was kind of bypassing the first apex and missing it by a few feet, but I was rolling over the inside curb on the second one. So it was a very aggressive
to get a good setup.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a very
right,
aggressive, like kind
right.
of hook of a turn, and I'd get the thing pointed and just accelerate over the inside curb.
That's helpful. It's funny you mentioned the bowl at Chuckwilla because when we interviewed James Tui a few weeks ago, he was talking about that exact
Yeah.
corner. James Tui, as you know, James. So the other reason
Yeah,
I bring
he's been
this
my
up
coach
is,
at the school since I was. He was my main coach from when I was like starting at like age 13 or 14.
well, he's done, as you know, for the listeners, he's done over 500,000 miles of just track time, just on the track. Don't forget street, just
No,
track.
dude is so
And
experienced, and he's like
we don't think there's
properly
anyone
fast too.
and properly fast. And he's a guy that doesn't drag his knee all the time. And like it's interesting watching these guys who are really fast. And so another reason, this is so great. So sometimes I'll see these young guys, yeah, they're really fast, actually, some of them, but they miss almost every apex. And they get off the bike after 2 sessions. Oh, I'm done for the day, man. I'm so tired.
Like,
and I'm
like-
like old fat man. I'm old fat man. And I'm like, well, I'm
Yeah.
relaxed on the bars. I'm not like this. And I'm actually hitting most of my apexes and I'm not tired. Is there a thing about like riding fast, but not online that tires you up faster because you're doing too much
Are
work?
you talking
right?
like customer or students at the school where they are like just naturally pretty good? Well, I would say a lot of those guys
like someone at a track day,
Or
like
track-
they're
okay,
really
cool.
fast, but they're
Well-
letting the bike ride them. They're not really riding the bike. So you know what I mean? Like they're fast, but they miss their lines are shit, but they're still fast. Like they're tired.
Well, I mean, it's probably a combination between them probably having done years of track days on like bikes where they're like, okay, my goal is to go fast, but they've had little or no formal training and they don't know what kind of where they're going, what they're doing. Obviously, coaching is not everything. Like you have to be able to do things yourself. But if you're overriding the thing and trying to make it do things it's not meant to do and not doing those things properly, like you're gonna tire yourself out. Also, you with your experience, like you've done so many days on the track that your body's like you've built the fitness up, like you've built the specific muscle groups. Like one of my good friends is a pro hockey player. Like we'll go skating and I'm just like my legs are dead in about 2 minutes, but he can go a full NHL game and be good. Wow. And he and I'll go to a track day and I can do, like he and I did an endurance race last year for fun. But we can do an endurance race and he'll do 20 minutes and he just comes in and he's just beat because he's not used to it. Like first off, hockey's a sprinting sport, which is the cardio sport. It's like the muscle groups have just not been worked. It ends up making to where you overcompensate. Like road racing should be about 90% legs when it comes to like hanging. The only thing you should do with your arms really is a throttle and steering. And even then, it should be kind of, yeah. But like you'll end up like when you start getting tired, you kind of tense up, you overcompensate, and that's what leads to arm pump. That's what leads to tucking the front on corner entry because the tenser your arms are like most people, if you just relax and you try to use your legs more to hang on to the bike, like you're gonna be good. And it's not hard.
That's a really good nugget.
Like physically it's not hard, but it's like you have to kind of get your head around it because like the wheel is always doing this, and if you're super aggressive on the bars, it doesn't allow it to come back, so it ends up skitter around and tuck a little bit, and that's what leads to most front end tucks. Like obviously sometimes it's just like unavoidable, like you're leaned over too far and there's just no grip and you've destroyed your tire, but like the majority of them I would say can be attributed at least partially on that.
Wow. Have you ever coached?
Have I? Yeah, I do private coaching. I've never coached at the school. I haven't done the training to become a coach of the school yet. I want to. I really want to.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Coaching, yeah.
Yeah, because, like I've got nothing against the other schools, but like, the Yamaha Champ School, most of the coaches are racers or ex-racers, and that's cool. They have a different perspective.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the Cali school. That's my main school, just to be clear. But I do the others, and there are some that I really like. But, I know Kayla Yakoff does some coaching. I booked a day with her last year, but she had to cancel it, unfortunately. So I'd love to get some coaching from you if you're ever up at the Ridge.
I'm down.
Man, I want to be respectful of your time. We've had such a good chat. Tell me a little bit about the supporters in your life, your sponsors, how people can get hold of you if they want to be involved with you as a racer, if they want to be on your helmet or whatever they want. Like, how can people support your racing career? Because you're so early in it, and I want folks to be able to help contribute.
Yeah, well, I mean, for people who want to reach out, you can reach out to my manager. Either message me on Instagram. It's at Jake Zimke or Jake at Team Was. Jake at Team Was. I can't remember exactly his email. I have to look it up.
Okay, we'll put
I
it on the
think
screen. Yeah.
it's in his Instagram bio. But he's my manager, so he's your guy if you want to get involved at all. But I mean, right now I got all my sponsors. I got Superbike School. We got Vance and Hines, Harley Davidson, Revzilla, Motul, Mission Chips, and HJC Food Sport, Revit. Somebody's gonna get angry at me. I'm so bad at running off the top of my
When you
head.
mentioned Revzilla, I had Zach Kortz on the podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I went to their little film studio when we went to Jersey for the race. Went to Philly and checked out their little area.
That's cool. It was Zach's pretty
dude.
fast on the track as well.
Dude, that's the thing. Like journalists, like I got like a different respect for journalists than I have for most people because they're like, I mean, they've ridden a lot of bikes and a lot of tracks and a lot of different situations, and they have like experience. Like proper journalists are gonna destroy almost any track day guy or even club racer.
Yeah, there's some really fast guys out there. Man, there's so many other things I want to ask you, but I'm going to ask you off camera. Look, it's really great having you on the podcast. We've had a lot of different folks from a lot of different industries, not just racers, but, from the companies, the brands, etc. Man, good luck in what is still a really early stage in your career, dude. And thanks for setting the record straight on a few things as well. I'm glad that you push the importance of learning and coaching, but it's not all about the coach. It's great to hear.
Or the bike, get on a small bike when you first start. If you're like, I'm not going to discourage you from taking the 1,000 you've had for 5 years that you've ridden on the street to the track, but don't go buy an R1 as your first. Like get on something smaller, a twin or a 400. Like they're cheap, they're fun. Like what's an analogy I could use? Like I don't know. Like I'm trying to think. Like if you're first learning to drive, would you rather jump into like a hypercar or a Honda Civic? I mean, it's going to be like it's a direct analogy, I guess, but you learn more. The things are more apparent. You can go harder sooner and use like more of what the bike has to offer, and that's to me is more fun than just winding the thing up on the straight and annoying the hell out of every other small bike rider. So you hold them up in the corners.
I mean, even at your level, right? I mean, even at your level, there's very few riders that take the bike to its absolute limit, right? So, or maybe there are, but the track day for sure not. I turned up at a track day, my first track day on a Panigale V4, fucking big mistake, and I sold it the following week. And I have a V2 Panigale as well, but
that's great.
That's the bike I take.
Yeah.
But I respect. That's a bike that needs a lot of respect. Like I feel like I only take it out when I feel like it's one of those bikes that bites you hard if you fuck it up on it. Like
they're torquey. They're super torquey, and it's basically a hot super powered 600.
Right, but my RS 660 is like, I have a Trofeo, which is a track only one. Yeah, the Trofeo is like. Dude, it's so great.
Twins in general, are the best track day bikes for anyone of any skill level, in my opinion. I prefer 1,000 myself, but I raced one, so it's fine.
On that note, we'll finish because I think I agree with you. It's super, super good advice. And thanks for joining, Rocco. Stay online for me.